we are whipping up a delicious twist on a classic favorite. This is egg roll in a bowl. This dish packs all the flavors you love from a traditional egg roll, but in a deconstructed, bowl-friendly format. And the best part, we're topping it off with a mouth-watering sauce that's gonna take this meal to the next level. So grab your apron and let's get started on this tasty, easy to make recipe that's perfect for any meal of the week. For the full ingredient list, check the description box below, but enough talking, let's get cooking. There's not a lot of prep for this recipe, and in fact, I'm gonna show you a few prep shortcuts. One of them I wanted to show you was I was just gonna buy a bag of shredded cabbage coleslaw mix, but when I went to the supermarket to get the ingredients for this shoot, they didn't have any. And that seems to happen every single time I go to the supermarket, that when I prepare my list, there's always something they didn't have, so we're just gonna have to go with a regular cabbage and clean this up. So we're gonna take off the outside ratty leaves. Cabbage always has a few of those. And we want to get to those nice clean leaves on the inside. We're going to give this a slice all the way through, very, very thinly sliced. And then I'm just going to turn these slices and slice this way and get this nice shredded cabbage, just like I would for a coleslaw. Now let's put a small dice on this onion. And we're only going to be using about half. Now let's put a mince on this garlic. Normally a lot of these recipes call for about 2 to 3 cloves of garlic. Here we're gonna put 6 because that's our Chef Ange garlic multiplier factor. And now we're also going to mince up this knob of ginger. And if you don't want to use fresh ginger, you can always use powdered ginger, but if I have fresh, I'm going with it. So a time-saving tip on a prep is buy a slaw that's already prepared. And again, when I went there, they didn't have any of the regular cabbage slaw, but they did have this broccoli stalk, cauliflower, carrot, red cabbage. I could put all these vegetables in there, or I could just throw a handful of this in there, and that's really gonna bump up the crunch and the vegetables in these egg roll in a bowls. Now let's make a sauce for this egg roll in a bowl. The sauce is gonna be a little on the healthier side because when I'm making these recipes, it is a healthier recipe for me. You know, the ground beef and the vegetables, not heavy on the carbs. We're gonna use a base of some 0% Greek yogurt. 0% Greek yogurt is great because it adds creaminess without adding a whole lot of calories. It's basically just all protein. And to that, we're gonna add one of my great Costco finds. This is this Japanese barbecue sauce. This stuff is delicious. It's like a cross between like Asian-y, soy saucy barbecue sauce. It's really good, and mixed with this is gonna add a really nice flavor. We'll put a couple tablespoons of that in there. Next, we're gonna put in a little sriracha for some heat and some sweet. Now we're gonna add a little of this garlic paste that we've been seeing in current recipe videos. So anytime I find an ingredient that I like, I wanna see how many things I can use it with, and this stuff is great for sauces. So a little squirt of there. A touch of some rice wine vinegar for some acidity. And a pinch of salt. Give this a mix. And now we're gonna pour this into a squeeze bottle for easy application. And we're gonna use our cut up milk gallon to get the sauce into the squeeze bottle. And if you don't have a squeeze bottle, or you don't have a milk gallon container with the top cut off, get one. So now let's put this in the fridge and head over to the stove and start cooking. The first thing we gotta do is we gotta scramble up 2 eggs. And I know what you're probably thinking, egg rolls don't have eggs in them, but we're eliminating the wrapper and it says egg roll. And I think that a fried egg, a little scrambled up into little pieces, totally works in this recipe. So I'm gonna put the egg in there. I've got these eggs that I've scrambled with a little bit of salt. We're gonna put a little spray oil in this pan, and this cast iron should be seasoned enough. We should be able to cook these eggs without much sticking. So I'm just gonna give these a quick scramble and then break them up and put them aside in a bowl. And while I'm scrambling them, I'm trying to chop them up into chunks so I don't have to do that later. It's also going to cook them much, much faster. So once these have been cooked and chopped up, we're going to remove them and set them aside. These eggs stuck a little bit more than I wanted them to. Let me clean this up a little bit, and then we're going to brown our ground beef. So now I'm going to get this pan hot over a medium-high heat. We're going to add a little bit of olive oil. And we're going to add our ground beef. I'm choosing a really lean 93.7 mix. Use whatever ground beef that you'd like. I just try to keep the calories a little lower by choosing a leaner meat. You can also do this with turkey. You can do this with pork, chicken, but we're going ground beef for today. I've already pre-crumbled the ground beef into little boulders. Makes it a whole lot easier to crumble the ground beef inside the pan. So once I got this beef pretty crumbly, I'm gonna season with some salt and some pepper. So 2 pinches of salt, a little fresh ground black pepper. Now I'm gonna use this Chinese 5-spice powder. This adds a really nice Asian-y flavor, but only a little bit because this stuff is super potent. Now I'm going to continue chopping up the ground beef. I'm trying to get it as crumbly as possible. And once I've got it pretty crumbly, I'm going to keep it on the heat a little undisturbed. We're going to try to get some of the beef that's touching the pan to get a nice brown on it, because a sear on a little bit of this meat is going to add wonderful flavor. So we're going to try to get just a little bit of browning before we remove this from the pan and get our vegetables going. So now this beef looks pretty thoroughly cooked, and we're getting a little bit of browning on the bottom of it. I'm gonna turn the heat down in the pan down to a medium-high heat, and we're gonna use our slotted spoon and remove the ground beef. Now that I removed the meat from the pan, we're gonna add just a touch more oil. And in goes our onions. And you could probably do this recipe where you keep the beef in the pan and then just add the vegetables to that. Personally, what I like to do is brown my meat, or remove it, cook all the vegetables, put the meat back in. This is going to ensure the meat doesn't get overly cooked and things don't get overly mixed. So once this onion starts to get a little soft, we're going to add our cabbage. Start to soften that up. Then we're going to put in our slaw mixture. And I like my vegetables to have a little crunch, so I'm not going to overly soften them. Now that those vegetables are in there, we can put in our ginger and our garlic. This already smells unbelievable. It's just vegetables in here right now. Let's season along the way with a little salt and some more fresh ground black pepper. Now that these vegetables have softened up a little bit, let's start adding some of our flavor enhancers. So first we're going to add a little low sodium soy sauce. A little rice wine vinegar. A little sesame oil. Some fish sauce. Stuff adds an unbelievable flavor. It's a great ingredient that makes a lot of authentic Asian flavors that I think that everyone should keep on hand. And for some sweetness, a little honey. I'm gonna give that a mix. Now we're gonna add our ground beef back in. And remember, the ground beef is already cooked, so we just need to mix it all in so it warms back up and melds with the vegetables that we got in there. And the last thing is we're gonna return our scrambled egg back in there before we shut the heat off. This looks and smells so good. and it's all done in minutes. Now let's go plate it and eat it. So while this is cooling down before we put it in the bowl, let's thinly slice some scallions that we're gonna top into that bowl. The way that you trim these scallions, I think, can add a nice visual touch. So first we're just gonna cut off the ratty ends. And now from here, we're gonna put our knife on a diagonal and we're gonna slice very thinly in a diagonal pattern. And I think this makes just really a nice looking scallion greens to top these bowls. So first, let's start off with a scoop of the meat and vegetable mixture. And this stuff smells so good. So now we're gonna dress these up with some sesame seeds. Here we're gonna go tuxedo style, so a little black, a little white. A little bit of that sauce that we made before. Some of those scallion greens. And now, how amazing does this egg roll in a bowl look? I am super excited to try it. It looks and it smells absolutely delicious. Now, before I try this, I wanted to add an ingredient I've been wanting to try for a while, and I think this is the perfect application for it. So this is this chili crisp that everybody's going nuts over. David Chang from Momofuku suing a bunch of people because now he thinks he owns chili crisp, but there's a bunch of brands. This one's the Mr. Bing brand. I've never had it before, and I thought it would be a great topper to this. So let me put a little bit on this and then let's try this bowl. And this is just like a bunch of crispy stuff and inside and some oil. So I'm trying not to grab too much oil. So I'm going to use a fork to just put a little bit right on the top of this egg roll in a bowl. But this looks really, really, really good. That is tasty. So now let's get a little bit of everything in one bite. I'm trying to get some of that chili crisp in there. Now this looks like an absolutely delicious bite of food. I am super excited to try it. Let's see what this tastes like. This is so darn good. I love Asian style foods. I always have Asian style ingredients, so anytime that I can make recipes that have that, especially an easy recipe like this is absolutely fantastic. Vegetables, high protein. This is exactly like I like to eat when I'm trying to clean stuff up, but huge on flavor. This is so good. The vegetables have the perfect amount of crunch. So if you're going to do this recipe, do not overcook the vegetables. If they're soggy and gross and this has no crunch to it, it's not going to be that good, but this is perfect. And all the flavors are coming through. An Asian 5-spice powder, I can definitely taste that on the meat. Remember, I only added a little bit, so be careful with that stuff that you don't put too much. This is so good. I'm even excited for the leftovers tomorrow because this will probably warm up absolutely fantastic. We all know that Chinese food tastes better the next day. And I really like that chili crunch. I've been wanting to try it for a while, and I thought this was the perfect application for it, and it was. This egg roll in a bowl is absolutely delicious. You could probably even serve this up with a little rice on the side. Maybe you don't want to cut the carbs too much. I'd even take this and put this inside of an egg roll. I'm sure it would be delicious. While I'm finishing up the rest of this, check out my chicken lettuce wraps. That's a really nice Asian style recipe. It's a lot of protein, a lot of vegetables, and not a lot else. I'll see you there. Thanks.